Good afternoon, everyone, once more. My name is Vinolia, and I'm the Marketing and Event Coordinator for ISCA. So today I'm joined by Prof. Chisasa, Prof. Joseph Chisasa, amongst us. Without any waste of time, I'm going to be starting with the session. So as you all know that we do have housekeeping rules. So I'm going to request each and every one of you to please stay muted and always check your microphones if they are unmuted, and then you can mute once again. And if you happen to have a question during the presentation, please write it in the chat box, and then we will attend it after the presentation. And if you want to interact directly with the speaker, you can just write your question somewhere so that you don't forget it. And then after the presentation, you will be given an opportunity to express your question to the speaker directly. So without any waste of time, I can see that our speaker is ready. So I'm just going to be giving you a brief bio about our speaker, their background and so on, and then they will be starting with their presentation after I'm done with the introduction. So without wasting time, today we do have Professor Joseph Chisasa, who is from the University of Pretoria, which is UNISA, well known as UNISA. Sorry about that. Yes. Yes, Prof. Joseph Chisasa is a former corporate banker and risk manager. He's also a professor of finance in the Department of Finance, Risk Management and Banking of the University of South Africa. He holds a Bachelor of Commerce honors degree in banking and a Master of Science degree in Finance and Investment from the National University of Science Technology in Zimbabwe. He is a holder of a Doctor of Commerce degree from the University of South Africa. His research interests are in agricultural finance, banking, credit risk management, and collective savings. So, Prof. Chisasa has published in international journals that include the Applied Business Research, International Business and Economics Research Journal, Journal of Agribusiness and Rural Development, among others. He has supervised master's and doctoral students to completion. Currently, he's involved in the implementation of the African Union Agenda 2063 through research capacity development under the auspices of the AUC UNISA Memorandum of Understanding. In particular, he is a part of the university's research team driving the UNISA and the Blue Economy Project within poor communities in cities and villages across South Africa. So Prof. Chisasa has conducted workshops aimed at educating the less advantaged in the area of financial management and business proposal writing and household financial management. So without any waste of time, I'm going to give our speaker the platform to continue with their presentation. Prof. Chisasa, you are welcome into the session. Thank you. You can now take over.
Thank you very much for that long and intimidating introduction. I don't even know whether I belong there, but thanks again, and colleagues, good afternoon. I hope that you will find the next hour worth your while. As already introduced, my name is Joseph Chisasa. I am going to speak very quickly about my research, and in particular, the research that into some commercial projects. It's the first time that I'm presenting something like this, so it became a bit challenging for me to understand exactly what commercialization of research is. I'm familiar with that, especially in the areas of sciences where they do patterns and so forth and so on. But in my commerce field, I failed to really place an accurate meaning to that. But nevertheless, I tried as best as I could to do justice to today's conversation. Now, I'm not very familiar with this Zoom platform, so I will, yeah, okay, I'm trying to figure out where I must pick the sharing of the presentation. Right, looks like I'm coming right. Please confirm to me if you can see my screen.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, let me try and put it in some PowerPoint readable format. Yeah, good. So my presentation is based on work that I did during my doctoral studies, which is bank credit and agricultural output in South Africa. And I examined the co-integration, short-run dynamics, and causal relationships between these two variables. Mainly, I am very much interested in pursuing solutions to the short supply of credit to farmers, and in particular the smallholder farmers, because that's the area where credit is quite constrained, as we probably all know. And for a long time, the entire globe has been chasing answers to why there is a meager supply of credit to smallholder farmers. Admittedly, it's a risky sector of the economy, but I think there are many more sectors that are also risky. But I think that's something that we need to interrogate even further. So I've deliberately decided to present here just to share with you very quickly what the paper sought to achieve. But the main focus of this presentation will be on what is now happening on the commercialization segment or leg of the study. So in this research project, the paper that we did here contributes to the existing body of literature by focusing on the finance growth nexus at sectoral level rather than at macro level, as many empirical studies have done. Essentially, if you go through the literature, the growth literature, you find that there's so much that has been written about, whether there is a relationship between finance and economic growth or not at all. So this particular study looks at the sectoral leg of that investigation, because most of the studies have covered the relationship at an aggregate level. So we decided to take it a step back and say, what does this relationship, whatever it is, hold for all sectors in the same way? So it also recognizes that focusing at a macro level, though useful, may not capture the specific attributes of sectors. And so studies that focus on the finance growth link at sectoral level are very limited due to absence of disaggregated data on bank credit and at sectoral level. I think this is the biggest challenge. In empirical research, you need accurate data, lots of it, in order for you to come up with plausible empirical results, so to speak. So that's why I think it's even very difficult to gain some accurate understanding of the dynamics of credit, the financing of smallholder farmers, because there's so much lack of finance data about their characteristics in the space in which they do operate. So in my case, I benefited from the fact that in South Africa, fortunately, the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries do keep statistics for this particular sector, though not necessarily all of it, but what they have was sufficient for me to test the hypothesis that I postulated for this particular study. Now, in the literature, you'll find that some scholars say the the availability of finance does not necessarily lead to growth, growth of output. Others argue that, in fact, the, the output growth tends to influence or stimulate the availability of finance. So it becomes a chicken and egg kind of situation. Some people say that there is no relationship at all. So this is why we decided let's have a look at this, because when you engage smallholder or smallholder farmers, you hear that their lack of progress or their lack of growth is attributed to the lack of finance or lack of access to finance. So we test the hypothesis that access to finance, in fact, influences or improves productivity and hence output of smallholder farmers. So I will not dwell a lot on the literature aspect, because the discussion I just highlighted is what is documented here. From a methodological standpoint, we adopted the following functional form of an econometric model, where we say agricultural output is a function of credit, capital formation, labor, and rainfall. And so we use time series data for the period stated, and then we applied the Johansen and Chisilia's core integration technique to analyze the data. We also use the error correction model, as well as the Granger causality test, in order to test our research objectives in there. So what you see here are just the quantitative outputs of the study, but I just probably will share here from this table here that what we found is that credit, capital formation, which is all the collectivity of all the capital equipment that is used on a farm, as you know it, as well as rainfall, have got a statistically significant contribution to the performance of smallholder farmers. So from this theoretical, empirical standpoint, we see that the presence of finance or credit is important for the growth and output of agricultural businesses. And then we also find that if we're looking at the short-term dynamics, we find that capital formation and labor still remain also, as well as credit, still remains statistically significant insofar as the determination of the performance of farmers is concerned. I'm going to skip the discussion and because these are pretty much from an academic standpoint. The reason why I put them up here was for me to demonstrate to you that the research that I am talking about is being commercialized is actually premised on this particular paper, which is already available on the internet. It's a published paper from, I think, 2014, 2015, thereabout, and it's also an extract from my doctoral thesis. So in the paper, we concluded that farmers are credit constrained, and that when we use the Johansen and Chisilia's co-integration test, we find that there's a long-run relationship that exists between agricultural output, credit, and capital formation. However, there's a negative relationship which subsists between rainfall and agricultural domestic product, which is the output itself. And then when we use the error correction model, we find that while credit might have a negative impact on output in the short term, the adjustment to that disturbance is actually the adjustment mechanism to the long run, where it is a positive impact, is actually rapid. In fact, the correction of the distortions happen quickly, so that the impact is not felt that much adversely. And finally, there's a unidirectional possession flowing from credit to agricultural gross domestic product. So in other words, what we're saying here is that when we look at at what causes what, whether credit causes agricultural output to increase or agricultural output causes credit to increase, we find that in fact there is no the relationship is not bi-directional, which means that they don't cause each other, but that the direction of flow is only from credit to agricultural output, suggesting that if we increase the dosage of our credit to farmers, the likelihood is that they will increase the level of performance. Now, straight to why I'm here today, I want to talk now about the commercialization of the research project, this particular one that I've just introduced you to. Having completed this and other related research projects in agricultural finance, I got tempted to test these research outputs in a practical manner. And so I decided to venture into a small agricultural project. So currently I am running a small farming project. And the nature of that business is a small scale commercial farming project, so to speak. Which commenced in September 2021, which is last year. So this project is hardly 2 years old. And it's located in a small district called Rediam in Limpopo province of South Africa. That place is about 90 kilometers to the north of Pretoria, on the freeway to Polokwane, otherwise 20 kilometers shy of Philadelphia. It is being run as a registered limited liability company. So we decided to formalize it and see what happens thereafter. So in this project, our objectives include the following: that we would like to contribute to food production. As you all know that Africa at large is food insecure, and South Africa is not an exception, so to speak. So we would like to try and see what we can do also to contribute in a small way, perhaps bigger going forward, to the alleviation of the stock of food in the country. As we do that, we also seek to create employment at the highest level possible given our capacity. And by extension, we hope that if we do that, we can also minimize crime as we take out some of the youths and able-bodied persons from the streets and get them busy with the work at the farm. And then hopefully we can also ameliorate the poverty level and hunger as well. And I think which is the essence of farming anyway, and that we can generate or create some capacity for families to earn an income. So those are the prime reasons why we are in this project. And again, obviously, one would like to know whether what we write about in our respective bits and pieces of scholarly work is entirely practical, or if not, the extent to which it can be operationalized. So now, getting back to the model that I shared with you, model of agricultural output, we have decided to take to have a look at all the factors of production that are included in the output, the production model, and then examine them as they relate to the project that we are running. And first, I will look at land as a factor of production. So what we did is that when we decided we're going to go commercial, we decided to look for a piece of land. So we were invited to go and see one piece of land in the northwest. If you can see the picture in the slide, that is the first piece of land that we were shown, and we said, "Wow, what a piece of land!" I can see that it's a mini forest, which means that we needed to clear that land before we could do anything, and at our own cost. Again, one attribute of this land is that there would be no title deed. Rather, you would get some kind of arrangement with the local leadership who would then grant you permission to use the land without necessarily assuming ownership. That was a bit of concern to us. But again, it's not uncommon. It's happening across the country and I think elsewhere. This is the same piece of land. The road infrastructure there is still being developed. I think there's also electricity infrastructure, as you can see those pillars of ESCOM. We assume that load shedding is not an issue, although we know it is. Then after we could not find peace in that other mini forest I showed you, we decided to move further north. And then we were introduced to a certain farmer whose farm had been lying redundant for 2 to 3 years, I think. And he was looking for tenants. So we decided to make a turn, and we were welcome, and we sat down. And in this picture, you see, this is where the first meeting took place to request for permission to lease a portion of the land. This land is a 21-hectare property with very good soils, I must say. And so from these discussions, it was very unfortunate that the landlord explained to us how it became kind of, what do they call this thing, bankrupt, given the kind of land that he has, the quality of soil is very good. The infrastructure there is also very good. But of course, he explained to us that in the 3 years before we visited, he had suffered hailstorm damage of his crops, the value of which was approximately 4 million rand. So that's how he got affected by a natural disaster. And this is the landlord that I'm talking about here, quite a jovial man, very experienced farmer, let me say, who eventually settled to some kind of lease arrangement for a year for starters. Now, the next factor of production is labor. You know that most of the developing countries are still relying a great deal on labor for production. Of course, there are pockets of mechanization that have taken place here and there. We are still struggling because of various reasons. But again, we also in this in our own study attribute that to a lack of access to finance, because we believe that with finance you'll be able to get some capital equipment that is necessary. But here, one thing that we found is that this farm is very close to a township which has got many people that have got lots of experience in working on the farm. So when we asked about labor from the landlord, we were assured that there is an abundance of labor in the nearby communities. So we took comfort in that. The man that you see in the picture there is quite an experienced person technically when it comes to the farm infrastructure maintenance. So we decided we're gonna bring him on board. What you see there in the picture is our workers that we eventually got to hire. We have currently got 10 permanent workers, but agriculture is a seasonal kind of business. When the season demands of more manpower, we hire more people. Yeah. So we hire more people in the last 12 to 18 months. The highest number that we have, number of employees is 30 on a land that is 2 hectares in size, or 20,000 square meters, if you want to put it that way. So We have arguably one of the most experienced and devoted team of workers, and we are also quite EE compliant. As you can see, most of our workers are female, but we also bring in the youth to make sure that we have got a balance in the demographic of our employees. You know, various technical skills are required. This young man you see in the picture is very good you know, so he's preparing so that they stay free of diseases. Another thing that we also realize is that in order for us to for the project to succeed, we needed to keep our workforce happy at all times, which you can see that big smile there from one of our workers, characteristic of what they're always found to be. Then the next factor of production is capital formation, which speaks to the capital equipment that is required on the farm project. I think I mentioned that we are busy as a continent trying to mechanize our farms and other industries, so to speak. But of course, what we managed to do is that that truck there is carrying irrigation pipes. When we go to the farm had, fortunately, the farm is equipped with 7 boreholes. You can imagine the 21 hectare farm with 7 boreholes, that represents a borehole per 3 hectares. So that's quite good, because many farms, you find farm of that size will probably have 3 boreholes. So we bought those pipes and then we installed them, because the area is not one that is placed with enough rains. I think Limpopo itself is not one of the best regions in terms of rainfall. So we decided we're going to supplement our water through irrigation. After all said and done, we decided to then start with the land preparation. And again, you can see the tractor there. We did not have a tractor. We had to hire tractors. And the man in the picture there, it's me. For those of you who have not met me before, that's me driving the tractor, tilling the land. And I think this is something that I think I would advocate for, that as a farmer, you need to get involved, get your hands dirty. And some of you will have heard of what are called self-owned farmers. I would say desist from being one and get busy with the actual running of the project. You know, when you do farming, acquisition of capital is not easy. That big machine there is used for spraying the land to kill weeds or grass. So that white tank there is full of a chemical that is used to kill the weed before you start planting. Again, it's an equipment that we had to hire because we did not have money to buy it. And you can see the tractor over there is now busy spraying the land with that chemical that I mentioned. That white substance you see behind the tractor is the chemical. Talking about labor also, I think family labor is one of the attributes or characteristics of smallholder farmers. The lady you see there in the picture is the presenter's wife. Get tapped into their experience or expertise. I think the management of the farm itself needs to have that skill that they can bring to the party to make the project work. Right, then the next factor of production is bank credit. I think you'll have seen in my heading there that I spoke about bank credit and agricultural output. I speak here specifically about bank credit not necessarily because it is the only form of finance that can be used to support these projects, but that it is credit in general is one of the biggest components of finance that is used in development. And we are aware, we know that the most immediate form of finance that would be, or the least cost would be your equity, your own money, where you say you expect people to save money, and then after saving, then they invest in whatever project that would be. For instance, if we had saved enough money, we could have used that money to invest in our family project. But we also are aware that in finance, you can use different forms of finance in your capital structure, in your capital base, so to speak. So you have your credit as one, you have your equity, which is your own money as an investor or shareholders funds. You can have preference shares and all sorts of other funding. But most of the smallholder farmers tend to rely on own resources, which are not enough, and as a result, they seek to borrow money in order to make up for the finance gap. So bank credit is one of the forms of finance that we use for our own project. We did not really consider going all out to borrow money on say on loan, but because we already had some credit instruments in the form of bank credits, we decided we're gonna use bank credit cards as well as our little saving put together to kickstart this project and test it. If it works, then we'll see if we can expand and see what capacity we will have insofar as credit is concerned. So I would say in our project, the project was pretty much financed from own money and credit cards. Mindful of the fact that the cost of credit on a credit card is quite steep. And we then decided we're gonna do a weighted average cost of capital, because we put in our money, which the cost of which will probably be the opportunity cost of interest that would have been earned from putting the money, say, in a savings account. And we know that that will probably be about 3% per annum. So the way you average that out, it comes up to some reasonable amount of the cost of financing the project, which we were able to set off against the returns on that project. Now, what would be the purpose of these credits? If we say we want bank credit, what do the smallholders, farmers need the bank credit for? One of the reasons why they need bank credit is because they want to pay workers, wages. I think wages in the cost structure of a smallholder farmer's business, wages are the biggest overhead, if you ask me. And if you look at other overheads, if you're looking at, say, electricity, and we know that ESCOM is actually pricing at astronomical levels, and the tariffs are changing day in, day out. So, and this is not in tandem with how the cash flows of the farmer. Farmers' cash flows are also seasonal, yet the overheads are not seasonal. They are constantly coming in periodically, and the frequency is quite higher than that of cash inflows. We also need the bank credit for purchase of seeds, where people will do their own seeds. But in our case, we decided we're not going to do what we consider very highly technical and perhaps very difficult to do. So we bought seedlings. Perhaps I should say that our first product that we went out for was the tomato crop, because when we arrived at the farm, we asked the farmer, the landlord, what would be best suited for the soils on his land. And apparently his advice there was that we do tomatoes, because the yields are very good. So we also in making the decision to take his advice, we looked at the fact that he had been into tomato crop production for 11 years at the time. And for the fact that he even had a crop that was lost, that was valued at about 4 million rand, we believe that he had the expertise and the experience that it takes to do tomatoes, and that he agreed to give us mentorship for the time that we were going to be learning the ropes, which he actually did very well, I must say. So for us, we went to buy seedlings, and seedlings were prepared by companies that are specialized in seedling production. But the other reason why farmers need credit is that they will need to buy chemicals, some of them for disease prevention, or for some of them for killing pests, and also to buy fertilizers, fertilizers for crop growth and all that kind of stuff. There are many different types of fertilizers, and the cost of all that has ballooned since Russia and Ukraine, and perhaps this is why we see the prices of foodstuffs going up, because there's a knock-on effect, which is cost push related. So we were fortunate that when we went in, the prices were still pretty much within our reach. But of course, after the Russia-Ukraine invasion, we have seen things taking a turn. And one of the reasons, again, that in line with the inputs, you see this car here is sitting, this blue drum. It's a drum. It's sitting in a car, an SUV. It's carrying a chemical that was going to be sprayed on the tomato crop, but because of a lack of appropriate transport of vehicle, we ended up using our family car to move the chemical from one point to the other. That red tank that you see there is a very important tank in crop production, because it's called a fertilizer tank. So instead of you taking the actual granules of fertilizer and placing them against each plant, you actually put all the fertilizer into that tank, and put water in there, then it becomes liquefied, and then you run it through the drip irrigation system. But to get that tank, it costs a huge sum of money, and without access to finance, it may be a nightmare getting that particular tank, which translates into you having to do the whole fertilization process manually. That also translates into an increase into the number of employees that you must hire, and hence high wages. When we realize that the land is not one which is blessed with natural rains, we decided to sink those pipes that you see there in black. They are irrigation pipes that we use to draw water from the boreholes onto the piece of land, which we then feed into drip pipes, so to speak. So that again is one reason why bank credit would come in quite handy, because this infrastructure is quite expensive to put up. What you see here is an extensive program that you, as a farmer, you must follow. All those chemicals and fertilizers need to be sprayed. This program starts from when you plant, not before you plant, to when you plant, up to when you start harvesting, until you finish harvesting. So you can see how much one has to spend insofar as the input is concerned. Now the output. I've taken you through the factors of production. Of course, there are some that have been silent about. For instance, the need for what do you call it? government officials that go to the farms to give that technical expert advice. We were fortunate to have a farmer of 11 years experience in the crop that we were growing, so we were sorted. But again, you also look at soils, soils as in the need to go and test your soils to see what they're suited for. Most of the time when we as small farmers find a piece of land, we just grow the crops that we are familiar with. It's not uncommon to see someone growing maize because they grew up knowing how to grow maize, or also because maize is a very cheap crop to plant. Currently, a lot of people are planting spinach because it is one of the cheapest crops to grow. But of course, everything else that is cheap has got its own downside implications. For instance, the prices become very uncompetitive because the supply side is always high because of the number of people that get involved due to the low cost production. Okay, now this is what we ended up getting after all that we put together. This is the first crop of tomato that we were able to see coming out of our work. Then we started monitoring it. When you see this crop looking as good as it is quite it's quite pleasing, but it can be misleading into thinking that you have now made it. And this is the most delicate part of the crop. This is where the crop, what we call it, spraying of chemicals and management of the diseases is very, very critical. Otherwise, it's quite easy to lose this entire crop. We were also fortunate in that we grew our tomato under cover. So we are growing it under a 5,000 square meter piece of land. Of course, we had two sets. The other variety of crop was not under cover. But the most valuable one, this round tomato, was the one that is placed under cover. So it protected that net protected it from diseases, it protected it from hailstorms, it protected it from intensive sun, the heat from the sun, and so forth and so on. So we were able to attract other farmers who heard about us, that things were happening, to come and view the crop that we're doing, and of course get some few tips on how we were doing things. Suddenly we're turning from mentees into mentors ourselves. And then time to harvest. We think that product quality is very, very important. This lady that you see here, look at the tomato that's in her hand. Very beautiful tomato. It's all credit to all the hard work that was done from land preparation all the way to that particular day. Now, that's me there parading the first box of our tomato crop that we're now preparing to go and sell to the market. In all of this, you need a right-hand person. You need a person that you can trust. As a small business, you cannot afford any losses at all. At this point, you don't have the liberty of making provisions for losses, because any loss is got a daunting effect on your progress. One other thing that we should know share with you is that the markets are an important part of farming, because I think that it's an area that is dominated by large-scale commercial farmers who actually go to the markets with trucks and trucks of the same produce that you are sending there in a very small, say, Toyota Hilux or the Hyundai H100, which we use in our business. It's actually very disheartening, because when you look at the product that they bring to the market, it's the same as that which we send there. In some instances, our quality is far better than theirs, but because they have the volumes, they've got the name, they've got the brand, the prices they get are far higher than the prices that we get as smallholder farmers. So I think, again, we need, I would say, farmers need that money to develop their processes, their structures, so that they can operate at a level where they can compete with the leaders of the industry. That's if you look at the boxes that are behind me there, all of you are familiar with the brand ZZ2. They're the largest producer of tomatoes across Africa. And at all times we'd be parading our small boxes side by side with ZZ2. What gave us comfort is the fact that when we compared the quality of our tomato to that of ZZ2, we believe that ours was much better, because at no point did we take a consignment to the market and it was not sold. So that gave us the confidence that we are doing the right thing. On that note, I want to thank you very much. In the picture there is myself after delivering our tomato in the Tswane market. Thank you very much. At this point, I will pause and allow the processes to unfold. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Prof, we can hear you.
Yes, I'm giving this back to the program director.
Oh, yes. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Precious Kudu from ISCA. I will be stepping in for Ms. Vinolia. I think she's battling with her network now. So in the meantime, I would like to thank you. Oh, she's back. Ms. Vinolia. Oop, she went out again. So I would like to thank you, Prof, for gracing us with your presence for today, and also for accepting our request to be a speaker for today. Thank you very much for your very informative presentation also. So from the chat box, I'm not seeing any questions as of yet. So if you do have any questions directed to Prof, kindly please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Prof, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You are speaking to Onwe from UNISA Business School, a distant colleague of yours. Let me start by saying congratulations. You have managed to commercialize your passion and provide employment opportunities for the community. But reflecting on your presentation, I think for us who are of the faint heart, who have comfort in the research space that we control, what do you think are the things that we need to really look out for as we start transitioning towards commercial or commercialization or commercial practice of some of the outcomes of our research? I'm raising this question mostly based on the issue of access to capital, and noting that you and your team somehow decided to use your own resources to a large extent, including your credit cards, to kickstart the project. For those that may not necessarily have that kind of capability, how would you give them confidence or what can you do to give them confidence to move ahead and start, even if it's baby steps, trying to commercialize? I pause here, Prof. I know it's a convoluted question. I'm still battling with it in my mind, but your thoughts will be appreciated. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mule. It's a very important question that I also always ask, and I'm still asking myself. But my response to you would be that first of all, I think you must understand the fact that whenever you decide you want to commercialize your research, it must begin by wanting to commercialize something that is really of practical interest to you, you know? And essentially it means that you have assessed the level of risk in that particular area that you want to embark into, and that your appetite for that risk is high enough. And not only that, but that you have also estimated the potential returns that will be assigned to that level of risk. And above all, that you have put together your safety net that will be able to cover you for those risks. So I think that first of all, you don't lose anything by trying, but you also stand to lose everything by not trying. So I would say go in there and test the water, because the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Be that as it may, I also know that the finance resource is a very important one in all of what we do, which is why we need to interrogate the financing space, especially startup finance. I think a lot of finance or risk modelers still grapple with that. I think that in the introduction that was given of myself, we had that also got an interest in collective savings schemes, and savings in general. So I would say for those who want to start their businesses, the best thing is first to attempt to save, especially if you are privileged to have an income. Don't eat it all. Put some money on the side. Do not wait until you can save 10,000 Rand per month, but do yourself a favor. Do an income and expenditure sheet for yourself, and try to stick to that as religiously as possible. Sometimes very difficult also with this Black Fridays coming in. We get tempted and we end up withdrawing some money that we had earmarked for some kind of investment project, because there's a very good deal that is suddenly appeared from nowhere. So I think personal financial discipline becomes a very important aspect of our preparation to get started in business. Because even when you get started, you will still require that attribute at the apex, because once you start seeing money flowing into the business, there's also this temptation of going to the RSWS program, which you were always craving to go, So I would say have that personal discipline, be mindful of the risks that characterize your area of interest, and also consult as much as possible where necessary. I will not even talk about going to banks, because this is an area that we still find with lots of bottlenecks. Currently, we try, in my own research space, I'm still trying to model default risk among smallholder farmers to see exactly how one can predict failure. Because currently, people are being painted with the same brush. There are some very good farmers out there. There are some very bad farmers also. But much as the sector is said to be risky, you cannot necessarily say that everyone within that sector is risky. But more than likely, if you present your proposal as an applicant for finance, farming, the first impression that comes is that you are one of those risky ones, So I think we must of necessity try to save as much as possible. If we get money from the bank, let it be just an add-on. In my space, I'm also trying to educate some people that I can reach in developing some very good business plans, because you see what happens is that when you apply for a loan for business, it must be accompanied by a good business plan. And that business plan is the one that is reviewed in your absence. One of the things that I always tell people is that when you write a business plan, you must write it so that it speaks for yourself, for you in your absence. And then the reader of that document does not have to find you to get answers for questions that they have. In fact, they should be able to get all the information that they need without even having to come back to you. So that can only happen with some extensive training and some extensive practice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. While you're waiting for your next question, please look at the chat. I think there's a comprehensive question for you there.
Thank you. The question says, are there any barriers to entry in the farming industry that you found hard to overcome? Let me start by addressing that one before I get to the connected question. Yes, there are barriers to entry. I think for me, access to land is one of the barriers. And so is access to finance is a barrier in itself. And so I found, well, I cannot say that I did not find access to land a hard barrier to deal with, because right now I'm working on a piece of land that I'm leasing. There are so many challenges there when you are working on property that does not belong to you. In fact, you are at the mercy of the landlord most of the times. So I think that it doesn't give you that leeway to be fully productive, because you are always with your bags packed, you know, and you don't want to operate in that mode. So access to land remains a critical aspect of entry into the farming industry. Of course, that's supported by access to finance. Otherwise, one would say, which one comes first? One could argue that access to finance is very important, because when you've got finance, then you can be able to buy yourself land. So you've got access to land. But by and large, both access to both finance and land are serious barriers that make people unable to go into that particular farming space. Then the second part of the question says, and how did you find your way around them? I think the land, as I only managed to lease the land. This is what we're still doing now. We're hoping that going into the future, we'll have accumulated sufficient saving to be able to purchase our own piece of land, or alternatively, we'll be able to access finance with which we can get a mortgage bond of a piece of land where we can do our farming. Then number three, how do you deal with climate change challenges to ensure that they do not negatively affect the crop? Yeah, these are, I think, first of all, climate change for us has entailed diminished supplies of rainfall, which means that we sit there with the water risk, and to circumvent that, we are privileged that the farmers, the boreholes, so we irrigate the land. Of course, it's quite hot, and so we need that lots of water. That's why we've got the 7 boreholes that we can tap into. And also that part is not as easy, because a borehole is just a hole that gives you access to underground water. But to equip a borehole is not an easy thing, because those pumps are very expensive, and they're also prone to risks of being struck by lightning, for instance, or even risks of being stolen because they are installed in open land. So those are some of the challenges, but of course, one would say under normal business conditions, one would need to ensure those are movable assets against theft, against lightning. But as a smallholder farmer, it becomes a huge implication. It comes with a huge implication on your cash flows. Sometimes we take the risk of not insuring and hope that God will protect the equipment. But in business, it doesn't always work like that. One day you find yourself sitting with a water pump that is not working anymore because it's been struck by lightning. So climate change is a reality, and we keep on, continue to look around for ways and means of protecting ourselves from the adverse implications of the change. Yeah, thank you. I think that's my response to that.
Thank you so much once again, Prof. Joseph Chisasa. I'm now going to give the platform to anyone amongst the audience who want to maybe say a comment or a question. They can just unmute themselves and state their question. Anyone in the audience? Okay, I think there are no more questions from the audience and in the chat box as well. So I'm just going to thank you so much, Prof. Chisasa, for allowing us to have you within this session. And without any waste of time, I'm just going to give you maybe 2 minutes just to say your comment or your final word before we close with the session. Anything that you'd like to pass to our audience, you can just say just 2 minutes and then we continue. Thank you. Okay, I think we have lost Prof. Chisasa since he mentioned that he's having network issues. He doesn't have electricity where he is. So I'm assuming maybe the network has kicked him out. But without any waste of time, if you'd like to have this recording, you can just quickly, actually tomorrow, it will be posted on our social media platforms, which is Facebook, Twitter, and also LinkedIn, even on our YouTube channel. You can just go there and subscribe for more of this kind of recordings. And for those who'd like to have our speaker's presentation, you can just email me at masibanv@iscar.org.za, the normal email that always bother you with so many reminders. You can just email it. So I'm just going to officially close the session as we have come to our final moment. I'm going to also thank our audience for being available, and have yourselves a wonderful afternoon further. And bye to everyone. Thank you.